This is the YOB ConvoCast, one-on-one conversations with your other brother's authors, community members, supporters, and friends.
What's up, friends, and welcome to the YOB ConvoCast, conversations with folks inside the YOB world, outside the YOB world, and somewhere in between. I'm really excited for today's guest. He was going to be our season premiere guest, but then he went on a little road trip, which we need to talk about very soon. But he's someone that I've just come to admire and respect, and someone I love dearly. He is my pastor here in Asheville. His name is Fred. What's up, Fred?
Hey y'all, how are you doing? Thanks for having me on. I didn't realize I was going to be well, okay. All right. It's fine.
You ruined our plans.
I had to reschedule.
I'm so glad you're here, though, because what's fun is that a lot of people listening undoubtedly have already heard your voice on another ConvoCast because they may have seen a conversation that we had on the Fellowship Asheville ConvoCast, the only two ConvoCasts in the world.
Yes, and all because of the same person. I completely stole the name from you, Tom, and I did ask permission, which you graciously gave. But it was not original with us.
Yeah, and as I told you on that podcast, I'm sure there are lots of people using ConvoCasts to name their show, but it's what we're doing, and we're rolling with it. Yeah. I know. I haven't actually Googled it to see, so I'm just assuming. We'll just assume that we're the only two.
Ignorance is bliss in this case. It's just you and me. Yeah.
Well, it was an honor to share some of my story and talk about YOB on the church podcast, and now it's fun. I'm glad you are open to flipping it around, and so now we can talk to you on the YOB ConvoCast. I'm really excited. Yeah. Real quick, just why don't you introduce yourself because there's a lot of people listening also who haven't heard that podcast and don't know who you are. So tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. My name is Fred Baker. I am the pastor of Fellowship Asheville here in the jewel of the Blue Ridge, as you like to say. Not Madison County, but Asheville, North Carolina. I have been here since 2008 when we started the church. And it has been a great part of my sanctification and a great part of my growth and my trust in Jesus is leading a church. It's one of those things that I thought I would never do. In seminary, I did my graduate work at Dallas Theological Seminary, got my degree in counseling, actually. And I remember sitting in the library there and I can't remember what I was studying, but it was one of those times where what I was studying was for class, but it was also just this really great time of worship for me too, just knowing and understanding God. And I remember thinking out loud / praying, maybe thinking before the Lord, not sure, if it was a formal prayer or not. But I remember talking to God and being like, gosh, I love doing this. I love counseling. I never want to be a church planter or a preacher because there was just a lot of insecurity in me about standing up in front of people preaching the word of God, because that's like this really heavy thing, and to make sure you get it right or as right as you can. And then moved here in 2008. To make a long story short, started a church with another guy named Jonathan North, and he was the lead pastor, and I was most like an executive pastor at that point. I also did a lot of shepherding community stuff, and through a series of events, he moved to Greenville, South Carolina, to work with the church there. I became the lead pastor because we couldn't afford to hire anybody else. And that started it. And what I discovered is I love teaching God's word publicly. I remember teaching one time. This is when we were meeting still at the Y. I think you joined us when we were at the Y.
When I first visited, we were in the Y, like this big cavernous gym, and it was dark.
Gym.
It was foreboding, but also welcoming. It had a lot of emotions. Yeah, I love that place.
And I remember teaching, and I can't remember what I was teaching on, but I remember thinking, and I think I even said it at the point, I was like, gosh, if if everybody can understand this, like if we can all understand this truth, I just saved myself like 200 hours of counseling people. Like if we could understand this. So to me, teaching was this way to shepherd a congregation instead of counseling being a way to shepherd individuals. And it was a lot of the same skill set. I mean, I actually got my undergrad in elementary education. So I learned how to teach with third graders. And a lot of the principles are the same. To teach a classroom full of third graders and to teach a group of adults, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, no, we're basically a bunch of third graders in our
in our hearts. Yes,
it works. Yeah. Well, that answers a lot of questions about, because I was going to ask you about your call to ministry and how that even happens. So that checks that conversational box. So thank you for doing that. Great. I want to reverse course a little bit, because at the top I said that we were going to talk a couple weeks ago, but you set out on the road. You know, I love the road. I love traveling. Yeah. And so I'm eager, because you traveled on the road with your mom. And I'm eager for tell me one story, one little bite-sized story of being on the road with your mom. Where did you go, and what was the purpose of said trip?
Okay, so the trip, it's you would have enjoyed this, Tom. You would have loved to sit in the back seat this entire time. My sister lives in Boise, Idaho. I live here. My mom lives in Texas. And so my sister and I flew to Texas, and the goal was to take my mom to Boise to spend the winter there. And so, Diana, that's my sister, had flown down. We were just going to work on my mom's house for a few days. And then my sister was going to fly back to Boise. And then I was going to drive my mom. Well, what happened is my sister, as mom and I were talking about the road trip and I was trying to get her excited, she wasn't actually very excited to leave her home and go to Boise for the winter, which I understand. But my sister was like, well, can I go? I was like, yeah, cancel your flight. Let's go. So it turned into a road trip with me and my mom, my mom, and my sister, which me and my mom hadn't done a road trip since I was probably 12, 13, somewhere like that. Me and my mom and my sister had never done a road trip before. And so, so it was really a first for us. And what my mom's, the reason we wanted to do this, my mom's memory is beginning to slip. And so she's moving into this stage of life that's really new to us, where we're just trying to figure out what it looks like to care for my mom when my sister and I are on opposite sides of the coast and my mom is in the middle. But we knew traveling with her would bring out stories that we hadn't heard before. And that's what happened. So that was really cool, was seeing my mom travel roads that she's traveled before, because we've made that trek when I was a kid. She's made it by herself. But to hear stories that we hadn't heard before. And then I had two highlights for me personally. One is that we got to go to Roswell, New Mexico. I've
never been there.
It is worth the drive. To go to the International UFO Museum is everything that you think it will be. And it is both cheesy and intriguing all at the same time.
Yeah. Isn't there like a spacey like McDonald's or Taco Bell or something too?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know. I thought I heard that there's like a fast food place that like incorporates the spacey theme. Maybe I'm making that up.
Yeah. It could be. It could be. We just kind of drove through. We did the museum and then popped into a coffee shop, and I got like a alien themed cafe mocha, which was, why not? You're in
out of this world, I'm sure.
Out of this world. It was out of this world. So that was cool. And then the other highlight, we drove through Moab, Utah, and I'd never been there, in the Arches National Park. Speaking of another world, it looks like you're on a different planet going through there. It was incredible. The creativity.
You're rattling off all these places that I've never been. Crazy.
Moab was a place I was like, I could spend a few days here and just hike, probably during fall or spring where it's not quite so hot, but just to hike around through those arches and stuff. It was just incredible.
Very nice. Yeah. you've given me inspiration, because I'm starting to check off lots of parts of the country. I've been to a lot of it, but I mean, you just rattled off a few places I've never been, and I've never been to Boise either. And so I would love to check out all of those places.
Boise's really cool.
I've heard great things. Yeah.
High desert mountains. It's really a great town.
Very cool. Well, thank you for indulging. It's good to always trade travel stories, whether people listening enjoy them or not, because that always fuels my soul. I was just in Texas as well, and so it's cool that we were in the same area around the same time. But I wanted to ask you in our remaining time, Fred, to talk about YOB and to talk about. I pitched this podcast to our supporters, and I asked them, like, what are some things I could ask my pastor? What are some ideas out there? And there was one question that I really loved. I've never heard this phrase before, and I really love it from outside of the gay or SSA perspective. He wanted to know, what was your coming in story, not your coming out story, but your coming in story, as far as becoming aware, I guess, of LGBT people in the church.
Oh.
Like, did it start with me? Have you met other believers like me in the church, whether it's at your church or previous churches or seminary or whatever? I guess that's like a question that our audience has, is like, how did you become aware of this and just becoming, because you've been so great to me and so affirming of me and what I'm doing. Listeners, again, can go watch to the Fellowship Asheville ConvoCast. And I'm just really grateful for you. And I just thank you for your affirmations of what I'm doing and what we're all about. But I would love to just learn, maybe some of your origin story, or how God has pieced some of this messy stuff of sexuality and faith together in your life. Yeah,
that is a great question. My coming in story. That's great.
Story. I know. We're going to stick with that.
So my best friend in high school, so this goes way back, came out as gay. Was it my freshman or sophomore year in college, maybe? And so we were roommates our freshman year in college, and I kind of suspected, but this was in the 80s, and in the 80s, oftentimes being gay meant that there was this whole culture surrounding it that was very stigmatized at the time, and typically the safest place for them was in like a gay club type environment, and so all the stuff that came with that, and so it was still really stigmatized at the time, but. In that, he was my roommate for first half of our freshman year, maybe the whole freshman year, and then he stopped going to college. I kept going to the same college. We kind of lost track of each other, but still, I had a great fondness for him, and he was my best friend for years. I became a Christian my senior year in college, and so and even through college, I knew people who were gay, but becoming a Christian, I went to a really, really biblically solid church, Denton Bible Church, that really discipled me in the ways of Jesus. And through that, this idea of, gosh, what does it mean for people to be gay and follow Jesus at the same time? And so that was, shortly after that was, what was that movement? The Exodus movement? Was that right. Exodus International? And so as they were trying to wrestle with that, with all their strengths and weaknesses, there were people that were trying to navigate that. And for a long time, it was, well, if you are gay, the church doesn't have a place for you unless you become straight. And as I went to seminary and got my counseling degree, I just kept wrestling with it, going, gosh, there's got to be a better way than this, because the gay people that I know and counsel, like as I counsel them, my goal wasn't to help them become straight. My goal was to help them become holy. And that could look very different, like it could mean that they didn't have, they didn't go from being gay to having a girlfriend, there was this big gap there. And so, but as I counseled them, that's what I counseled. It's like, let's not worry about, if you're homosexual becoming heterosexual. Let's just talk about what does it mean to be a follower of Jesus. And so that's just kind of all that I had to work with. And then, moved here, started the church, met you however many years ago that was, and heard about what you were doing. And you introduced me to this side B thinking on this, to where it is biblically permissible and possible and holy and righteous for someone to say, yeah, I'm gay, to the outside world. The Christian world seems to like the phrase same-sex attracted, that makes more sense to the church world. And I'm following Jesus, and I believe in a biblical sexual ethic. And so that's why when I met you and heard about your ministry, and it was the first time I had heard of a ministry that is pursuing that. That's why I became one of your biggest cheerleaders, because I was like, that's the piece that's been missing this whole time, is this belief that someone can be honest. Shocker, someone can be honest about their temptations and pursue Jesus at the same time, and hold to a biblical sexual ethic and live in that tension. And the ups and downs of that, and the trials of that, what I love about your ministry and the people who write for you and the podcast that you do, is y'all are very open about the trials that come with this, and the blessings that come with it. And so that's why I just love what you do. So does that answer the question? Does that say my coming in story?
That's perfect. No, I mean, I knew none of those details from college and having a best friend and all that stuff. So that's cool to have that perspective now of where you're coming from with this issue and these people. Cause even my best friend from college has since come out as gay too. And so people that I know and dearly love are gay. And so I want the best for them. I want Jesus' best for them. And that's what I think your ministry offers, is a way to navigate that. Yeah. And I love that you are referring, well, I don't love it. I'll explain. I don't love that you're using the word ministry, but I do, because for the longest time when YOB started in 2015, I would have never used the word ministry. That's such a loaded word, and I would have never used it. I was like, we're just blogging. We're writing a blog. And that was literally all we did when we first started, was we were writing blogs, me and 10 other people. And then you add on a podcast, and you add on a Patreon page, which comes with a Facebook and now a Discord community and Zoom calls and yearly retreats. All of a sudden, I don't know who was the first person to start using the M word, to start calling us, start calling this thing ministry, and then to call me I guess a minister or something. I don't know. It's been jarring, and it's been new terrain these last few years, especially, but to have your support, to have Fellowship support, I mean, it's just, and to have so much more. It's not just localized here in Asheville. To have support literally around the world has been such an affirmation of what we're doing. And it hasn't been perfect. It certainly hasn't been easy, but I'm really grateful for voices like yours speaking into my life that, encourages me to keep going when it gets difficult and when it gets hard. So thank you for
Tom, that. You're welcome. I think if I can just affirm you for a little bit, I have seen God use you. No, please.
I'll take it.
No, please. I have seen God use you as a very gifted leader for years. I have seen you go through the messy part of ministry, where people that and love, who were in your inside circle and dear friends of yours, leave, and the pain that causes. And I have seen you walk through that with Jesus and build your own leadership and build your ministry for His glory. And Tom, I pray for you. I think of you all the time, and every time this smile comes to my face because of how God is using you. So I love you. I love what God is doing through you. I love YOB. I listen to the podcast. I think what God is doing.
Yeah, that means a lot. Thank you, Fred. It means a lot to hear you say that you listen to the podcast, or that you might read a blog here and there. Because it'd be one thing to be like, oh yeah, I love what you're doing, keep doing it, and to separate yourself from it. So the fact that you would interact with the content as well is encouraging to me, as the person creating the content primarily for a gay or SSA audience. But it's always my hope that straight people are listening, that pastors are listening, that ministry leaders and parents and and other people outside of our quote little world are also listening. So that means a lot to hear. I'm blessed to have you as a pastor. What would you say in our last couple minutes? Like, there are undoubtedly, unfortunately, sadly, there are lots of people listening who don't have a pastor like you, who either A, don't go to church because it's not safe and they just can't find one or have one, or B, they might go to one and they can't dream of the day where they could ever share about their sexuality with either peers or certainly ministry leaders. Like, is there this isn't like putting the world's problems on you right now, solve it in 30 seconds, but I don't know, is there any kind of encouragement you would offer to someone who doesn't have the support of a church, or just, I don't know, anything that you could offer from your vantage point, from how you've interacted with me, with YOB over the years?
Yeah, I would say, just off the top of my head is, try not to assume the worst of the pastor that's pastoring the church that is near you or that you're going to. It may be worth a conversation. And I know it's so hard because I also know there's people in that are your other brothers that are yobbers, that are even people that aren't yobbers but are listening to yobbers that have never told anyone what's on there and what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and the thought of telling a pastor that is really scary. And I would say there are more pastors that are compassionate and empathetic than aren't. And I would think if you sat down with the pastor, the chances are pretty good that you're going to get an empathetic and compassionate ear. That doesn't mean that that's going to be the church for you. There may be other issues in the church where it's not a safe place. But most of the pastors I know would give you that empathetic and compassionate listening ear. And so it'd be worth the conversation. And if you try and it doesn't work, like, shameless plug, join us online. We've got a whole online community that we would love to have you. And I hope that we would be a safe place for you to explore Jesus.
Yeah. Are we still getting viewers from, like, where was it? Like Albania or Slovenia or somewhere? Like
Moldova. Yeah.
There we go.
Yes, Moldova. Mary is a missionary there. And so she's actually one of our online hosts now. So she's not just listening, she's engaging and part of our online congregation.
I've heard from listeners over the years, shout out if you're listening from Croatia. And so there are people.
Wow, yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy that we can sit here in Asheville and there are people literally from all over the world that are engaging in the content?
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. And it's like, I think mentally I knew that when we started a blog. Like, theoretically, yes, anyone could click onto it from Croatia, Moldova, Australia, wherever. But then when it actually happens and then they actually reach out and they send an email or join our community, like, it's pretty surreal. It's pretty crazy.
It is.
I love that Fellowship Asheville is having that international interaction as well.
Yeah. When you've had a retreat, what's the furthest someone has come?
We've had, this year was just America based because of the pandemic. So only people from America, but we've had people from London, from the UK come to visit. And
Isn't that crazy?
Someone literally, I don't know if you would qualify it as the North Pole, but it's like basically the tippy tip of Alaska. Like, you go north and you're like on the coast of Alaska. So someone came from that far away as well. So it's been pretty special to have. I know that's still America. Alaska, I see you. You're still America, but it's also really far away.
It's really far away.
That's a long distance to come to the southeast.
That's really far away. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Fred. Yeah, thanks for offering that to our listeners, because I would encourage that too. Like, and I know, like, obviously it doesn't erase the fact that there are not safe churches and pastors and people to talk to. And so a lot of just wisdom and prayer, I think, goes into this. But I think that's an encouragement to a lot of people if they're on the fence about it. Like, maybe if you're prodded, if you feel the Spirit leading you to step out and have that conversation with, if not the head pastor, an elder or a deacon, or I don't know, someone else in a leadership position, like, that could be an awesome opportunity to just take the jump. Because I've been blessed. Like, everyone I've ever told, it's always been received well. And again, I know that's not every story, unfortunately, but
no, it's not. But
if you build, if you have enough of a rapport, you build some rapport with there. I think a lot of people are I think, way more receptive to it in the year 2021 than they would have been in the year 1981, for instance.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a perspective that people could have. Well, Fred, I knew it would happen. It just disappeared. This conversation is gone. It's over. It's done.
Just like that.
We had a lot of great conversation topics, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Yeah. Well, it's my pleasure, Tom. I love you. I love what God's doing through you and through your other brothers. So keep going.
Thank you, Fred. For anyone listening, if you'd like to learn more about Your Other Brothers, what we're all about, check out our site, yourotherbrothers.com. Our Patreon, where we talk about yobbers and community. You might hear us talk about that from time to time. Check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/yourotherbros. And until we cast our next convo, this is Tom. See you later, y'all. Thanks, Fred.
Bye, y'all.